Hey guys, it's Ashley, and in today's video we're going to be talking about my reading plans and my TBR for May. In the past, May has always been the start of summer for me. Like, I know that May is technically still part of spring, but because I live in Florida, it feels very summertime. And so around this time, I always want to start reading more contemporary, more romance, and that sort of thing. I have decided to ignore that feeling this year, and I'm just gonna give you a list of fantasy books that I want to get to this month. No, in all seriousness, I really just don't know what I want to read this month. I'm very conflicted as to what direction I want to go in, what book I want to read next, so I'm just going to give you a list of books that I sort of have a feeling that I would love to get to soon, but they might hit me in that moment, they might not. I don't really know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna try to stick to this as much as possible, but as usual, if you've been here for a while, you already know that that technically does not happen, and if you're new here, hi, welcome! Rarely do I ever read my whole TBR. So I don't know why I continue to make these videos. I guess I'm just an optimist and think that maybe one day I'll be able to finally read a full TBR. But that day is probably not today. So first off, I want to talk about the book that I'm currently in the middle of, which if you watched my wrap-up from April, then you will already know that I am currently rereading The Devil's Thief by Lisa Maxwell. This is the second book in the Last Magician series, which I just found out is apparently not going to be a trilogy. It's going to be a 4-book quartet series, maybe even more, depending on what else I don't know. Like, why am I so bad at keeping up with book news, you guys? I don't understand where everybody else gets this information from and why I am so left out of the loop. Yeah, so when Lisa Maxwell was writing The Serpent Curse, which is the 3rd book, I swore I thought I heard somewhere that she said that it was going to be the last book. But now people are telling me that they've read the 3rd book and it's clearly not the last book, and I'm like, hold up. What is going on? So good news, there's more to the story. Bad news, I'm apparently just as oblivious as I've always been. So yeah, I'm in the middle of rereading The Devil's Thief. This book is honestly taking me a very long time to read, which I'm not surprised by because I have a lot of other things I'm trying to do at the same time. So just for those of you who might not know, which is probably none of you considering I talk about this series all the time recently, The Last Magician is one of my favorite series of all time. It's a young adult urban fantasy historical fiction blend of sorts following this girl named Esta who is a time-traveling thief. So she has the ability to stop time, and with this special artifact, she can actually travel through time. So she makes it a mission to travel from the present day to 1902 New York so that she can get onto this crew that's going to be performing this heist in order to steal this very special book from the Order, which is this sort of like horrible, evil, sort of like group of people that also have very like heavy control in the government. So yeah, anyway, it's a really great book. I am remembering now while reading the second one why I absolutely love this series so much, because the romantic tension between Hart and Esta is just like everything to me. It's everything. And if you like romantic tension in fantasy books, I highly recommend picking this up. So obviously, since I'm in the middle of that book right now, the next book that would be on my TBR is The Serpent Curse, which is the 3rd book in that series. I'm not gonna go into too much explanation on this because obviously I just did in the last book, but if you watched my Come Book Shopping With Me video recently, then some of the books that I feature here might look familiar to you because now that I just got them, I want to read them right away. So this is one of those books. I'm gonna read this month. I'm definitely going to read this month. It will happen. And so piggybacking off of the last book in my Come Book Shopping With Me video, I would really also love to get to Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse this month. This is an adult fantasy story that is influenced by the pre-Columbian Americas. I tried reading the synopsis so that I could give you guys like as much information on this as possible, but to be completely honest, even the synopsis is really vague, and I am that kind of person who likes going into books not really knowing what's going on, so I feel like this book was just made for me. But to tell you as much as I can, so it seems like there's this holy city of Tova and the winter solstice is coming up, but apparently it's also coinciding with the solar eclipse, a rare celestial event prescribed by the sun priest as an unbalancing of the world. So that is happening, this big event in this world is happening. And also there is this ship that is being captained by Ziala, who I think is one of our main characters. She's a disgraced teak whose song can calm the waters around her as easily as it can warp a man's mind. So the ship that she is captaining is going to Tova, and they also have a prisoner on the ship named Serapio, a young man blind, scarred, and cloaked in destiny. And I love this line. It says, as Ziala well knows, when a man is described as harmless, he usually ends up being a villain. That's literally all that we get from this synopsis, and it just makes me really excited and eager to go into this story because I, like I said, already don't really like to know a lot about what I'm going into. I like to be surprised and, you know, taken on a wild journey, so I'm really excited to get to this one. I do have 2 books that I would love to reread this month, the first of which being none other than The Lost Hero by Rick Riordan. This is book 1 in the Heroes of Olympus, and you guys have been waiting for me to reread the series so that I can start vlogging it, and I promise you that this month will be that month where I start doing it. As soon as I finish my reread of The Devil's Thief, I might just hop right into this one rather than going straight into The Serpent's Curse, because I know you guys have been waiting for this video and I don't want to put it off any longer, so we'll see what happens. But I'm really eager to continue to reread this story, or at least not to continue, to start rereading this story because I haven't started it yet. This will be my 3rd time reading this series, but it's my favorite Rick Riordan series for a reason, and I'm just really excited to go back into it. And then the second story that I would love to reread this month, but may or may not happen depending on what I'm feeling and how much I can get to, is going to be This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This is like a far departure from the things that I normally read around this time of year when summer comes around. Like I said in the beginning of this video, normally I'm very much a romance contemporary centered person around summertime, and this is a far cry from that. This is a young adult sort of dark fantasy story about humans and monsters. It's so good from what I remember about the first book, but I never ended up making it to Our Dark Duet, which is the second book, and for some reason I've really wanted to go back and read a Victoria Schwab book recently, so I figured what better way to satisfy that urge and also to finally finish this series than to go ahead and reread this first book. We follow this one girl named Kate, who is a human. She's a monster hunter. We also follow this boy named August, who is a Sunai, which are monsters who can sing a song and steal your soul, I believe, if I'm remembering correctly. We're set in this sort of city that is divided and at war with one another, and it's crumbling, and like I said, it's a dark fantasy, so I'm just really excited to hop back into this, you know, kind of creepy, eerie world and to finally get to the second book. I never finished the series, and now I'm finally gonna get to. I have a lot of high hopes this month. I still have a couple more books to show you, so I'm just crossing my fingers that I can get to all of these. The next story that I would love to get to is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This story I recently hauled in that last Come Book Shopping video with me as well, because like I said, a lot of those books I really want to get to, and now that I have my hands on them, I'm gonna add them to this TBR. This story is about a town who every year leaves a baby as an offering to a witch who lives in the woods because they believe that the witch terrorizes the town, and by offering up a child, the witch will not do that. But in reality, the witch is a nice witch, and so she ends up taking the babies that they give for offering, you know, and sending them off to the other side of the forest to the town to parents who want them. But one year she rescues a baby and accidentally feeds it moonlight, which gives it magical powers, and so we sort of follow this story of this girl, Luna, whose 13th birthday approaches. She's coming into her magic, and a bunch of different things are happening at once. Somebody is trying to hunt the witch, some sort of big event is occurring, and things are going to end up happening. It's kind of vague as to what exactly that is and like what is going to happen, but I'm really eager to hop into this story because every time I feature it in one of my videos, I get a couple of comments that say how much people loved this story, how moving it was, how beautiful it was, so I'm just really excited to add something like that to my TBR, which is sort of a different sort of story than my usual like YA adult fantasy that I like to read. Sometimes I like things that are very beautiful and very touching, so I'm hoping that this is that story for me, and that's why I'm adding it here. Not sure if this one will happen this month, but I would also love to be able to get to Unravel the Dusk, which is the second book in the Spin the Dawn duology. I read Spin the Dawn last year and really loved it and have been meaning to get to this second book because surprisingly I remember a lot of what happened in that story. It's not often that I read a book that I remember like a lot of the details about, but this one for some reason I just remember a lot about. So I'm really eager to get to the second book, and the reason that I haven't yet is just because I don't actually physically have it with me, but I'm hoping that this month I will be able to do that and buy it, and then I'll be able to read it. This story, if you haven't read the first one yet, is about this girl named Maya, I think was her name, but don't quote me on that, it was something with an M, and she is a really good seamstress, a tailor. So the emperor invites her father, who is ill and cannot really do the work anymore, to compete to become the imperial tailor for the emperor, but so as not to bring shame upon her family, she ends up going in place of him. So it's kind of like a Mulan-esque story where this girl then has to compete to become the imperial tailor and then ends up having to try to sew these 3 gowns that were made for the gods in order to prove herself worthy. It's a really good story. I highly recommend if you haven't read it yet. Again, it's a YA fantasy, and I just really liked it. So I'm hoping that I can get to the second book, but we'll see what happens. So second to last, we have another sort of far cry departure from what I'm normally reading in this TBR so far, but I wanted to add something that was not not fantasy, so we have got My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Backman. If you've been with me in my channel for the past year, you will know that last year I read Beartown and absolutely fell in love with it. It's one of my favorite stories to date. A lot of people since then have been telling me that I need to read this story, and so I've had it since then and just haven't picked it up. So if I decide that I want something other than fantasy this month, I'm gonna try to read this one. But again, I'm adding a bunch of books to my TBR, so we'll see what happens. I actually have no idea what this story is about, to be completely honest, so let me read it real quick and then I'll give you a quick summary. I think I'm about to actually cry just reading the synopsis. What the actual hell? The story's about this girl named Elsa who lives with her grandmother, who is 77 years old, and she is, quote, standing on the balcony firing at paintball guns at strangers crazy. They seem to be really close and have a really close relationship, but one day Elsa's grandmother dies and she leaves behind a series of letters apologizing to the people that she has wronged. So Elsa takes it upon herself to, I guess, give the letters to the people that the grandmother wrote them for. So it says, her grandmother's instructions lead her to an apartment building full of misfits, monsters, attack dogs, and old crones, but also to the truth about fairy tales and kingdoms and a grandmother like no other. Oh my god! I have this feeling that I am going to cry reading this book, and I don't like it, but I'm also so excited for it. So yeah, if you haven't read Frederick Backman's work, I just highly recommend. I only read Beartown, so I can't vouch for any of his other stories, but I've heard people rave about A Man Called Ove, and I really want to get to the story. And then the last book that I want to put on this list that I may or may not get to because I haven't decided how soon I want to read this is actually book 8.5 in the Keepers of the Lost City series called Unlocked. In my wrap-up, I asked you guys whether it was necessary to read this because I know that it's just like a novella filled with a bunch of other extra things, and you all said yes. It's imperative that I read this novella that is inside of this book filled with a bunch of other things that I don't really need. So what I'm gonna do is possibly get it on ebook because my library doesn't actually have it available to rent. I'm gonna figure out what I'm gonna do, whether I get it physically, whether I read it on ebook, I'm not sure, but I'm gonna end up reading this novella. But again, whether it's this month or next month, I'm not sure. I might take a break from this series that will allow me to catch up on editing my vlogs so that I can get them out to you guys, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, as usual, with all of my TBRs. We'll see. And then really quickly before I go, I just wanted to make a quick mention of Webtoons real quick. So in my wrap-up, again, I'm gonna keep referencing my wrap-up here, I asked you guys for recommendations for Webtoons, and you all came through with so many good recommendations. Thank you so much for all of those. For those of you who might not know what Webtoon is or know what I'm talking about, it's basically an app where you can go on and read different comics and graphic novels that people upload. A lot of them are ongoing series that people are currently in the middle of writing and drawing, and it's just a really great place where you can get a lot of different stories for free, as well as look at a lot of different artwork and just see how talented people are. It's absolutely insane. So highly recommend, if you like comics and graphic novels and you don't have Webtoon, to download it. This is not paid, sponsored, or anything like that. I'm just obsessed with the app and I want to share it with you guys. One of the most requested recommendations that I got was Purple Hyacinth, which I have since started and have absolutely fallen in love with. I'm only on episode 25, I think, so not too far into it yet, but the artwork is incredible. The story, I'm just totally sucked into it, so I'm so excited to continue reading it. And I have a whole list of recommendations that you guys have given me, so I'm gonna slowly move through that list this month when I have free time and when I'm not reading other things, and we'll see what I get to. But yeah, thank you so much for your recommendations. Like, they do not go unnoticed. I make sure to keep a list of these things so that I will get to them in the future, and I'm just really excited to continue to read more Webtoons because, like I said in that wrap-up, I'm addicted, I'm obsessed. I probably shouldn't continue to read them, but when has that ever stopped me? Now that I've been talking for 26 minutes, this wrap-up is finished. If you guys have any books that you are planning on getting to this month, definitely let me know in the comments down below so we can talk about our reading plans together. But otherwise, I think that's going to be it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you later. Bye!